I saw there's nothing like everyone is like Phoenix or Lansing, they are like clustered in like post inference, like after you have your answer. So I'm like, there's nothing at the entrance like before you even set anything.
All right, I think we should come back and wrap up just to like proceed. So the next presentation is on Flutter features with GenUI and BrightHR, and that will be Manu giving us the presentation. Yep. So, okay.
That's a mic.
Someone's MacBook. Nice MacBook.
I thought it was the. Oh. Wow.
Stand up a bit to the right.
Sorry? Do.
Oh, no.
Good. Let's share the screen.
Anybody got some paint?
Perfect. So, first of all, welcome all. My name is Manu. I have been in industry for almost 6 years. I've started building SDKs, mobile apps from iOS, Android, now went to Flutter. I've also done a bit of web development, mostly in blockchain, so Web3. So mostly front end. So now I work as a senior Flutter developer at a company called BrightHR, which is in Manchester. And yeah, welcome to the talk on GenUI. Before I get started, I wanted to ask, I assume everyone here are developers. Perfect. How many of you guys have tried Flutter? Good numbers. How many of you have heard of GenUI? Nice. Nice. How many of you have tried with the package, GenUI? No? Great. So this session will be purely technical and demo focused. I prefer that way. So I'm going to show you code base, I'm going to show you demos and a very little slide. So, so let's first understand what is GenUI. So in order to explain what GenUI is, I want to tell you guys a story which have been used, which I use whenever someone asks me what is GenUI. So imagine you are a person who is trying to withdraw cash from ATM. It's a busy day, a long queue. So you just enter the queue. You wait for a very long time. You go to ATM machine, you insert the card. Once you insert the card, that's when you remember that you don't remember your PIN. So what do? You open your phone. You log into the bank application. You have never opened the bank application at all because you just use bank application for checking the balance or some account details. So you open the app. You click on the first thing that you notice is login screen. So thanks to biometrics, login has become easy. You log in. You see account details, you see transaction history, you see everything, but you don't see what you want, which is card details. So you click on account details, then it's already getting time up, like people are like waiting, and then you start to panic. You're like, where is the card option? So finally you find a card menu in the bottom navigation, you click on it, and then also you don't get what you need. It would show you card details, it will show you a lot of other things, and then there would be a card menu option. You click on that, then you get reveal PIN. So you click on that and you reveal the PIN. By the time you do all this and enter the PIN, it's timeout, right? So, and then if you are like a very shy person, you just walk away. So this is what happens. I know this example is very dramatic, but the chances of this happening is high. And the problem here is you as a person has to learn how the product is built. You need to know how the app works. You need to know which action to take on and which button to click on. So a lot of the product developers and product engineers or UI UX developers are trying to figure out this problem of user interface, but no matter how much you do it, there's always a certain number of users who are left out. And that's where GenUI comes into picture. GenUI, by definition, it is a way of generating dynamic user interfaces based on user context, which is, with this example, say I open my app, a bank application, I just ask, give me my card pin. So it just gives you the UI for the card pin. So you just click on it, do it. So that's all. So it's getting adapted to the user. So it's about, it's not user understanding the product, rather the product understanding the user need. So that is what is GenUI. So traditionally what happens is everything is static. So you have a fixed screen, you have a fixed button, you click on this button, you go to a certain page. It's all static. Static is kind of a good thing, but you also need that dynamic user interface, and that's where GenUI comes into picture. Before starting with GenUI, it's very important to understand this concept called as function calling. So a lot of the AI now comes with, AI models comes with something called as function calling. In a very small way to explain what function calling is the ability for AI to call a function. Now, this is theoretical, but practically AI will never call a function. It will spit out a JSON. You parse the JSON and you know which function the AI is trying to call. So back then when AI came into picture, it was all spitting out text. Now it has grown to a level where it can spit out a structured JSON. Let's see a demo and then go through the code base. And here I've taken a simple example. It's a bank transfer application. So when you're transferring amount from one account to another account, what would you usually do is you first check, the logic behind the system is you first check whether a sender has enough amount to send, whether the receiver is verified and he's added in a peer or not. So now let's just say send $100 to Manu. I am not a receiver who has registered to this account, so I just click on send. Now what happens is, I'm using a local model here. I'll show you the thinking process also, so I've used a thinking model. So here what the goal is, the user wants to send 100 to Manu using user ID 1. User ID 1 is the current model, the current logged in user. Let me just get this done and then I'll explain what's happening. So what is happening here is that it follows certain steps. So it has get balance, it has verify user, and then it has something called a send transaction. Now send transaction has to be executed only when get balance and verify users are true, because when you are sending an amount, those are the things that you need to verify. And I've written, so here if you look at it, it's like when I'm trying to verify the user, and here you get a false, meaning the user is not verified. The verified user in this case is Alex. I'll try to send an amount for Alex. And now if I execute the same thing, what is happening here is everything goes through the same thing. It first gets the balance, it gets the user, it verifies the user. And you can see here the tool calling that happens. So it calls the get balance, it calls verify users. Verify users has been successful. Now since both are successful, now it will call send transaction, which will happen now, send transaction. And you can see that the goal is achieved. This is function calling. So function calling is giving the ability for an AI to call a function. If I want to show you in a glimpse what is happening in the code base. So if you look here, so all you do is you have bank tools. So if I go inside, I hope this code is visible for you guys. Right? So if I go inside bank tools, all I've done is I've defined schemas. So I've defined schema saying that there is a function called get balance, there's a function called verify user, and there's a function called send transaction. I've told what are the parameters that particular function takes. Like for example, get balance needs a user ID. Verify user also needs a user ID and an optional account balance. So that's why in the required, I'm only specifying name to be required. And then in send transaction, you need a sender ID, you need a recipient ID and the amount that you're trying to send. And all of it is required. So this is the schema. You define the schema. You tell AI model that this is a schema that is needed. And once the schema is defined, you define the system instruction. You say that you are a banking assistant and you have available tools like get, balance, verify, set transaction, and you write set of rules. You say that when you are trying to do a transaction, first verify the user, verify the get balance. Both can be done parallelly, which will be done, and only when you receive both the output as success, then call send transaction. And that is what is happening. So here I'm using a local model. So I'm using Gemma model. I didn't want it to exhaust my free Vertex AI tokens. So, and here what you do is you just call the models and it understands. So the model, so the framework that I'm using is Gemma. A package that I'm using is Flutter Gemma. That gives whether the response that is coming from the model is a text or a function call. If it is a function call, handle that function call. And handling of function call is done by ourselves. So I check whether what is the function that AI is trying to execute. If it is get balance, I just execute get balance and I write the logic of how the function should be performed. So it is get balance and you have verify user and send transaction. So this is function call. Okay. Now, how can I use this function call to do GenUI, which is dynamic user interface? That's the next step. So let's do that, which is GenUI with function calling. Let's see the same demo. So in the first demo that I showed, when I tried to do a transaction to someone who is not verified, you just got an error saying that this person is not verified. But if I try to do with GenUI, what happens? Let's do send $100 to Manu, whose account number is some random number. Press enter. Literally it's the same logic, except here there is GenUI implemented. So what happens? The same thing. It understands the instructions. It knows what needs to be executed. Step one is to call those two functions. The function call has not yet happened, so that's why you don't see the tool call that is happening. Now it called get balance. It called verify users, but verify users has been failed. So it now calls something called as request add pay from form. Okay. Now if you look at it, you got a form which you can fill it. So it should have taken account number. I don't know why it's not taken, but let's try to add it. So instead of getting an error message, now you got a UI. Okay. So you have the name pre-filled, you have the account number pre-filled, you save and continue, and then the same thing executes. Now there is a peer or the recipient is added now. Now the verify user will be successful and the transaction happens. Okay. Now if you look at it, AI is not calling, AI is not doing this stuff. You as a developer, you write those functions. You just, what you do is you take the user input, convert into understandable stuff for AI and let AI spit out the goal, which is schema. Okay. And now why is it not? I think I should put the same number. So as you can see, it has taken all these inputs and then verify user is true now. No, this is a condition. So first step, get balance, verify user. Get balance is you still have balance and now it is verified, the user is added. So since both the check is successful, I'll proceed with send transaction. Now send transaction is called and the transfer is successful. Okay. So this is GenUI. So GenUI does not spit out, like instead of spitting out an error message, now you get a UI that you can handle. But the code, if you look at the code now, let's go to the second code that I have had it. So here it's the same logic that I've written. The only thing here is that there is a new handler which is this request add payer form. So this was the function call that was called when the transactions was not successful. Now in that you need to do everything, like you need to extract the name, you need to extract the account number, and you need to maintain the states also, like show this UI and stuff like that. But this gets very complicated when you start writing a lot of GenUI functionality. So in order to reduce this, that's where the concept or the package by Google, which is GenUI package, that is helpful, okay? And that uses something called as A to UI protocol, which is AI to UI protocol. Now, this is a protocol defined by Google, and when I say protocol, it's just a set of rules. They're saying that when you are spitting out a JSON format, spit out in this format, which is you have a component, you have an ID, you have all the parameters that particular UI components to be present. And this JSON format is responsible to render this UI. Okay, let's try to see that in demo. The same thing, everything works, but now I'm not using a local model, I'm using Firebase, because the integration of GenUI package with Firebase is very simple. If I have to do it with local model, I have to do a lot of things. So that's why I've just used Firebase. The same thing here, but let's try to do, instead of asking it to send transaction, let's ask what's my balance. Okay. Now, this is not GenUI, just disappeared. Should I run the functions or let me close it and open it again? Let me not run it. What's my balance? So it still executes get balance and it spit out the balance. Now if I have to do send $100 to Bob, whose account number is, this is much faster Firebase, because the model is not a thinking model and it uses a best model to give it. And now you can just see. And one thing that you also need to notice is that this part, I have not written this text at all. It is generated through GenUI package, which is Firebase, which is LLM, which has an agent in it. It understands the user context, spits out the JSON format, and when it is spitting out, it also spit out the proper properties that needs to be present. So here it says, please add Bob as a pay to continue the transaction. And then you do add pay, and then the transaction, it adds the pay, verifies the user whether he is correct or not, and then it calls sends transaction and it's successful. Now, the major impact here you could see is in the code. So now if you go back to the code of GenUI package, all you have to do is in GenUI, the way GenUI works is, the package works is, you first define the catalogs, meaning list of widgets or list of components that AI can render. So here I've just rendered column, I've just rendered text field and button. So this is a simple use case. So I'm not telling how to arrange stuff. I'm just saying that these are the components, you can use it and display stuff. So I've defined these components, and if I go to the page implementation, I first have to write something called as surface controller, where I define all the components that are present. Okay. Then I connect to a conversation, and I first build the prompt, which is a system prompt and the components that are present, and I define the model and I start the model, which is chatting. Okay. And once the once I get the callback from the response from the chat, I check whether that response is a function call or not. If it is a function call, I'll execute, because all the logic that I've written is in the front end. Okay. So I try to call this function call. If it is not a function call, just don't execute anything, just return the chunk back. When I say chunk back, it goes back to the package. And in the code, all you have to do is, where is surface So there is one widget called surface. Okay. In the UI part, all you have to do is add this widget. That's it. That's it. So no matter what UI that LLM is trying to interpret or render it, everything happens in surface. So you don't have to define column, you don't have to define container, none of this. Everything is taken care. So the goal or the rule here is you define the widget, you define the system prompt, and you attach everything, and everything does by itself. Okay. So this is GenUI with GenUI package. But the problem that you see here is that the logic that you are writing is in front end, the LLM model is in front end, the system prompt is in front end, the widget catalog is in front end. So everything is in front end. So right now, say for example, you need to add a new feature, which is say for example, I need to show the transaction. So if someone comes and asks, show me the last transaction, what happens is I have to release a new app. I have to write the system prompt again. I have to deploy the widget catalogs again. So everything gets complicated there. And also you are keeping the agent in front end, which is not a good idea. Okay. So that is where the next concept comes, which is GenUI with A2UI, where you take the entire LLM, put it in backend. Okay. So your goal is only to have GenUI stuff doing in the front end, entire logic in the backend. So I'll show you the code base first and then explain. So the front end code base is just one file. That's it. Just one file where you try to connect to a backend through something called as a connector. You connect through a backend, and I'll show you a demo. It is a local backend. So I've written a fast API backend in Python. So you do a connector, and you add the transport layer, everything that was there in GenUI package, and again you just do surface. So surface, and then you try to put the surface here, and everything else gets rendered. So you have reduced the code base from 4 files where you had to maintain everything in the front end to just one file, which is connect to the backend and rest all in the front end. Okay. Now, if I show you the backend code, backend has everything. So all the schemas, all the GenUI stuff, all the bank tools that are present, which is who are the verified users, what are the transactions, what are the balances, everything is in the backend. Now, if I show you the output, and also in the backend, I am using Gemma model using Llama. So I'll just first serve it, then I'll get the backend running. Backend is up. Let's go to the demo backend. Backend is kind of slow because I'm running a 12 billion model in the Llama. So let's first ask, what's my balance? Now the Llama tries to understand everything, and then it spits out the first prompt is always time consuming. And then when I ask for what's my balance, now you don't get a text, rather you get a UI. It should display, it takes some time, and now you can see that you have account balance and you have the balance displayed. Back when we were doing, it used to get out text because we had to define all the catalogs. Now let's try to do something more. Let's try to do our first use case, which is set $100 to say a random name. Let's not give, let's give James, whose account number is, enter. Same stuff, everything, all the logic that we are, like right now, if you see, there are no function call that happens in the front end. So none of it is displayed. All the backend logic is sent, all the logic is sent to backend. Now this will give out you the UI. So it should appear now. So, and yeah, so it sees that James verify user has become false because the James is not present, and it should spit out now the UI. So it gave us the UI, and it says I couldn't find James in your this, please add to the details. And when I click on add, now add pay is called, with all the IDs back to the backend. And then once this is added, it sends the transaction so that you will see in the next step. And also I'm using thinking model. So thinking model is usually slow. It tries to do a lot of stuff. So send transaction is executed. Everything is happening in backend, so that you will have more control there. And once that transaction is done, you should get a success message. And yeah, so your transaction of this to James has been successful. Now, like if I ask, what's my last transaction? So none of this is written in front end, no UI. All this UI is GenUI generated. So everything is dynamically generated. So when I ask for this, it should give out the last transaction. And the reason why I highly I wanted to bring this concept is, when you have the logic or the agent in the backend, the useness, I'll try to explain it with an example. So you got the last transaction. Let's say, for example, give me overall account details. So I'm trying to get the entire account details. Now, if I try to do this, it will give you an error. It should give you an error saying that I don't have the ability to do this, because you only have defined send transaction and this, so you get an error. But since it's a backend, so I can just go to my backend code and I can just add the tool of show overall transaction, which will again generate me a list of components like headers, stuff like that, name, balance, all the transaction. Now let me deploy the backend again. And now if I ask it, give me overall account details, now it will spit out a JSON file for me, and that will be helpful for doing generative UI. So this is the overall concept of GenUI. GenUI is basically to generate dynamic user interface. So now if you can see, you got the entire overall account details, everything. So you didn't have to do anything in the front end. So just go to your backend, write the or add the tool, and that spits out the JSON file, and that's renders. So the overall goal of GenUI is used to build dynamic user interfaces, but that doesn't mean that you have to replace the entire screen or entire widget or entire product with GenUI, because you cannot just create a black box and ask it to do everything. Especially when you have elements where animations, or where you know that this has to be present, you don't have to give a way again to ask for it. Okay, so for example, in bank details, you need to see the balance. I don't want to ask every time. So that's where you need to bring a balance between static user interface and dynamic user interface. When it's a very tedious process, like for example, revealing of PIN, I just ask for it. I don't want to spend a lot of time going around learning the app and getting stuff. Okay, so that is all about GenUI, but it also comes with pain points. The disadvantage is, not disadvantage, some of the issues that you could see is, the first thing is decision paralysis. That's very common in AI. So when you are building GenUI feature, you try to keep the feature very minimal. If you try to put the entire feature of your app to GenUI, the AI models, the system prompt increases, the widget catalogs increases. So every request that you send will send all of that to AI model. When you give a lot of context to AI model, it becomes difficult for it to make decisions. So that is what is decision paralysis. So one of the way to tackle it is keep the feature very minimal. Testing is harder, mostly because you cannot test a AI model. So that's what is ChatGPT, right? So you can test all your UI components, you can define your UI components, you can write unit testing, everything you can do. You cannot test You can test, but it takes up a lot of token. If you have a local model, well and good, you can test all the scenarios. But yeah, you should try to, like, since you are defining a feature, you need to test all cases, all types of prompts that a user can put, and then see if your GenUI is handling all those edge cases. The next one is debugging. Again, comes back to the second point. Debugging is difficult because no two prompt gives you the same UI. Okay, so that becomes difficult. Consistency. Security, again, that is completely dependent on you, what functionality you are giving. Like, for example, I came across this one beautiful example about how AI can be dangerous. So imagine the problem that you are trying to solve is to eradicate global warming. Okay, so you give the whole data, the entire world data that is still there to an AI and say to, solve global warming. The first thing that AI would do is kill all humans, because you are saying to, you're not putting that restrictions. Okay, so that is where it's important for you to decide what kind of tools you need to give it to AI. Okay, so, and coming to token and cost, yes, token and cost is something that you have to keep in mind. If you have big feature, you have big system prompt, you have a lot of schemas, context, everything. So every request that you send goes as one big chunk. So token cost increases. Maintainability comes into picture when you have GenUI feature implemented in front end. So there you have to go update and do stuff. So that's something becomes a pain point if you put everything in the front end. Okay? That's about GenUI. And if you have any questions, and here is my LinkedIn if you want to connect. Yes.
So my first question is, I was thinking how we can relate what you're doing with what you said about edge AI. Like, is there a way, based on what you've worked on and what he worked on, is there a way to? So, for instance, banking data, I can imagine that they're private data. We don't want to expose that data to external. So, is there a way to
the example that I've shown is using local model.
Local model as well.
So it does not use cloud model. So since it's transaction, I wanted to bring this use case of bank, which is sensitive information. So I didn't want it to send it. Though everything is mock data, if you are trying to use, you can use local models. And even in your backend, you can define your local models within yourself and not use other models. So you can use it. So
was it queued? I realized there was lag sometimes between getting response back from the functions.
Yeah.
Is it queued?
No, it's not queued. So I use thinking model. So whenever you use thinking model, what happens is when it takes the context, it tries to understand the context step by step. And if you see in this use case, let me just do this here, send 100 to Manu. So what is happening is it just sends the request to a model. A model is analyzing, and those analysis is what is shown here. I could have just showed one single text. You would not understand what is happening and why it is taking time. The reason it is taking time because I've used thinking model, and I wanted to show that what are the steps that are happening in the background. And it is not queued. It's just that it stops. So when thinking model, when you have a function call and you have a thinking model, it does not execute everything. It executes something and then it tries to see if there is any functions. Like for example, if you have used any coding agents in ChatGPT or anything, so when you write something, it asks for you whether to use this tool or not. So that's what is happening. So it stops there. It's like asynchronization. So yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So my question is about how to design the UI itself. So I know that AI is the one splitting out the UI, right? In the case where you need to modify the UI or you want to have a bit of customization, right? How do you? Is there any?
Yeah. So the entire control of how the UI has to be showed is left to you. You can define everything. So all that AI is giving you is it's giving you the schema. Okay. So that's the reason why I explained function call first, because all it is doing is it is matching the function name, and the same thing happens in GenUI. It matches the UI name, and then how the UI has to be rendered, it's your decision. So you can do. And if you look at it, all the UI that it generated, it was black and white theme, and that is something that I define. I define how the UI should be looking. AI only gives you the schema.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess 2 quick questions from me. Firstly, have you found that certain models play better into working with ATUI in terms of all of the models that we're using here were Gen 4 or Google-related models, and have you found that those have been specifically targeted more to work better with ATUI than more general tier models like DeepSeek, GLMs, linear models, or
So if you want to use GenUI feature, you need to have a model which has function calling ability. If a model is not made for function call ability, then you can't use it. And if you look at all the Gemma models, Gemma 4 models, every model that is Gemma 4 has tool calling in it. But if you look at Gemma 3, they don't have it. So, and the reason why they have done it is because from Android 17, Google is trying to put function calling into the mobile model itself, which means that you can define functions in your app and let Gemma model call that function. So yeah, to answer your question, you need to check if the model supports tool calling or not. It's not necessary that the model should have thinking capability or not. That is a different thing. But if it has tool calling ability, only then you can use it with GenUI.
And the only requirement is for it to have tool calling responsibility, so the German models haven't been specifically trained in a way that play better into doing UI. It's more just, here's a tool that allows you to generate that. And I guess as a follow-up to that, how much do you find that the HGUI protocol blows the context in terms of if you've got, let's say with this app, a reasonable number of components and context? Is it a quite concise, paraphrased thing, or is it I want to add one new component and that will add 800 new tokens to every last single call that I make too?
Well, so the thing is, I don't know if I can answer that question fully or not, but I'll try to explain. So you know that LLMs are stateless, right? So
they don't reply with the entire set of things that they can do with it.
Exactly. Now it's a question that you have to ask to yourself, whether do you want to keep every context that you have sent previously. In my case, I didn't want it to, because I wanted only for send transaction, wherein you show the transaction, when you click on it, the transaction has to happen. For that, I didn't use memory, rather I used last prompt. So I just executed the last prompt. So in that case, you can reduce your context. And also you need to fine tune your system prompt in such a way that you need to be very specific to it. If you use AI to generate system prompt and put it, then you're not going to get a good outcome of it. So you need to fine tune your system prompt based on your testing and stuff like that. Any other questions?
Sorry, I'm more of a web guy. I don't know, do you know if this is available on the web?
But I'll just display this. This is one of the app that I'm currently working on, which is called Fitlog AI. It's not yet live, but sign up for the early access. It also uses a lot of AI in it. I'm going to use GenUI also. I'm thinking of a feature to implement GenUI, but sorry for that.
Yeah, fine. Do you know if it's available for the web, GenUI?
Sorry?
For web, do you know if that?
So A2UI protocol is a global protocol, and that protocol is supported by, it's platform agnostic.
Okay.
So any platform, it works. But the thing is, the package, like in Flutter, you have Flutter GenUI package. But in web, I have not seen any GenUI package. So if you don't have the package, then what you have to do is you have to write manual processing of that A2UI to your UI. If it is Flutter has a package. So, and it takes care of everything. So all you have to do is add surface, and AI will give you the prompt, and that will generate UI. Or else you have to build. I think people are working on GenUI very much because if you go to any LLMs, like for example Gemini, ChatGPT, if you have a pro version and if you ask, give me top 10 restaurants in Manchester, back then you used to get text. Now you get map, you get image, everything. That is what is GenUI. Okay. And if you have used Jira in your office or anything, it has its own AI tool called Rovo or something. And there, if I have to create a ticket, back then you have to click on a button, write the ticket name and stuff like that. Now you go to that AI model, you just write, I want to create a ticket for it. It spits out an image or a UI and you can just accept it. If you want, you can accept it. That's where GenUI comes into picture. So it's trying to solve that things. So, any other questions? No? Great.
I don't have questions, I have suggestions which I'll give it to you personally.
All right, perfect. Great. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Sure.